Falcha, hello and welcome to Keith's Whisky channel. Thank you for joining me. In this video we're going to do a little whisky chat. One of my friends and colleagues in the tour guide business, quite a notorious figure. He's been one of the most whispered names in the background of the Scottish political scene in the last few years. He is currently involved in some ongoing court cases, so we can't really discuss them. However, with his background in politics and the court cases maybe being in that area, we do get there eventually with a little bit of Scottish political chat. But before that, we do some whisky tasting. We run through some Talisker whiskies. Now I've got a couple of Taliskers on the shelf just for display purposes, of course. We've got the Talisker Skye, that's one of the ones that I try with Mark. We've got the old style label of the Talisker Port Roux as well. We go through the Talisker 10, the Talisker Skye and the Talisker Storm, so the sort of the core range from Talisker. Skye is a place that we both go quite often through work. We met up on the islands of Lewis and Harris, or the island of Lewis and Harris, earlier this year. The year of filming is the year 2023, and we had a few drams, and we also finished up with a nice Laphroaig Cairdeas. Now, not this exact one, but we've got a nice Laphroaig Cairdeas here as well. Also, using the trusty whisky tour guide Keith Whisky Pointer. The Herich came out this year, a little bit after I'd spoken to Mark. That's just to signify where we were, the island of Lewis and Harris. And you might also see a couple of bottles either side here. These are new, or the first release from the new Holyrood distillery in Edinburgh. It's called Arrival. And I just thought the Holyrood distillery, it's a little point towards Mark and his background with the Holyrood Parliament in Scotland as well. So a few little biographical hints on the shelf. Now, nice introduction there. We talk about Mark's past lives, obviously talking about whisky, a little bit about tour guide, a couple of little anecdotes as you'd expect as well. I'll come back on at the end and say cheerio, but for now, pour yourself a nice dram. Put your feet up and hopefully you'll enjoy a little bit of whisky chat with whisky tour guide Keith and Mark Hirst. Slange. Okay, so here we are in our little whisky den, and we're going to get down to some hard whisky drinking, whisky tasting, whisky research. How are you doing, Mark?
Not bad, looking forward to this.
Excellent. You're a bit of a whisky drinker, you like a whisky?
I like a whisky now and again.
First time you drank whisky, can you remember?
I mean, it had been about 13 or 14. My dad he had a cabinet, as everyone did in the 70s, a drinks cabinet for when you had visitors coming round. And me and my pal, James Bernard, Jim, we used to take turns at going and raiding the parents' drinks cabinet, you see. So my dad wasn't a whisky drinker at all. So to obviously hide the fact that we were scooping some of it, we would top it up with malt vinegar.
Oh, right.
And to the point that we couldn't even touch it. But my dad used to say, you couldn't understand, but he had people come into the house and they were whisky drinkers, and he would say, would you like a wee dram? And they would go, and then they would take one, and sometimes they wouldn't finish it. No wonder, you know, it was just horrible malt vinegar that should be on chips.
You're talking about your mum and dad's vodka or whatever, and you'd be as well just, we just drunk it.
But I remember as well, we had, I mind going to Jim's house, and his dad had, I can't remember, it was something ridiculous, it was a brandy. And I remember, I thought I was dying. We scooped it straight like this usual teenage kids, and I thought I'd really done myself some damage that day. But just what kids do, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, me and Mark work together. We're both tour guides at the moment, going around Scotland, and I often tell my punters that it's most people in Scotland, their first experience of whisky. It's not like with the pinky up. It's smashing back a quarter bottle and a half bottle, or maybe New Year's morning when you come down and parents have a party and there's still stuff lying about, and you're not drinking it for enjoyment, you're drinking it for effect, and generally getting put off it straight away.
Yeah.
Well, we'll hopefully have a more enjoyable experience tonight. So our first whisky this evening, I have got a nice bottle of Jura, single malt obviously, and this is a red wine cask finish, cask edition. I was over in Jura for the first and so far only time, 2021, on my birthday. I've done a wee individual review of this, So you can check that out, obviously, the whisky tasting, but we'll see what Mark thinks of it. So on my birthday, we were over there, visited the distillery, ticked it off, one that I was looking forward to visiting, and because it was my birthday, we got a nice wee bottle. So,
Nice.
See what you think of this.
And what, like, you're big into the whisky, obviously, but when was your first experience of whisky?
So, more or less what I was saying there, I think so I was 14 or 15, or 15 and 16, we did a school exchange with a German school from Marburg in Germany. Now, they were all a year older than us, and when you're, say, 15, 16-year-old German girls are a lot older than 1 year older than you. So it was quite an informative time in more ways than one. But when they came across here, we did a wee trip up through the Highlands, and we stayed in the youth hostel in Glen Nevis. It's still there, just halfway up out of Fort William. And we'd walk down into Fort William, get the nearest off licence. You'd send the oldest looking person with a leather jacket or whatever on the back, a couple of bottles of quarter bottles of White and Mackay or whatever it was. I wasn't paying much attention to the brand, and I just sculling it, and just feel the heat. I actually quite enjoyed the heat, but I didn't enjoy the flavour that much, and then certainly the after effect were a wee bit something to cope with. So a bit more refined this evening. Jura red wine cask finish. So it's not got an age statement. NAS, so who knows exactly, but a nice colour on it.
Yep.
So as you know, a wee bit of a nose, tell me what you think.
Yep.
How good's your nose, how good's your palate? Did you back yourself?
Not that good. Like I told you, I'm an aspiring whisky enthusiast.
I'm not an enthusiast, but
that's what was lovely. Yep.
So with the red wine, relatively fruity.
Yep.
Juicy. It's not got too much. Doesn't smell too strong. I think it's 40%, so it's quite light.
Yeah. Nice colour on it.
Now, out of the distilleries in Scotland, and obviously you get loads of different expressions from the same distillery, but the three that I struggle to really enjoy the most, we'll put it that way, not the three that I dislike the most, but the three that I can take or leave a little bit. This is one of them, Jura. I don't know what it is, it's sort of a little bit about the mouthfeel, so I quite enjoyed this one. It's quite drinkable from what I remember, but it's just, I don't know, so I don't know.
There's a vague malt vinegar.
No,
I'm joking. No, it's nothing like malt. It's nothing like my dad's whisky.
Have you been drinking this in the slang?
No, that's lovely.
That's a lot woodier. When you drink it, you don't get much of that in the nose.
So, like the Juras, you know, like people say, oh, that's peaty or that's smoky. They're mostly smoky, are the whiskies there?
I think just a tad, just a very light smoke. Right. Anything. Obviously, they're right next door to Isla. That was one of my things. I've been to Isla loads of times, and Jura's just honestly a literal stone's throw, and just couldn't get over. So, I mean, Isla's got 9 working distilleries as we speak, but Jura, geographically, could almost easily be lumped in with them, but it's just classed as an island. So just very lightly smoky. It's right on the coast, so maybe those maritime notes that people talk about a little bit, but it is quite separate from Isla in the main. But I would put it in quite close to Bunnahabhain.
Yep.
So Bunnahabhain is largely unpeated Isla. Isla's notoriously peaty whisky, smoky, all that punch, all that earthiness. Whereas Bunnahabhain, they do peaty ones, but they're sort of exceptions. They're sort of main releases. The Bunnahabhain 12 is unpeated. So I think Bunnahabhain and Jura are quite close.
How protected were the distilleries generally in terms of how, you know, everything that's going into their whiskies, or some, like, I'm not telling you, or, you know, from your experience, because I've heard different stories about it, you know.
It's like everything, there's a bit of variation. So on Isla, Bruichladdich, they're all about provenance. So they're going down to the barley, and I think on every bottle there's a wee code you can go online onto their website and you can trace back all the ingredients. They are trying to bring in terms like terroir, which is more of a wine related definition. So if you go into a French vineyard and you say, so why do you make this type of wine here? It'll be something like, because we make this type of wine here. These are the grapes that grow here. This is the atmosphere, and this is what's produced. Well, that's the terroir, the environment, the history, the knowledge that goes into how we make that wine. So Bruichladdich are similarly trying to bring a bit more of that in, because barley, one of the three main ingredients, isn't usually local. One or two distilleries will do locally, but like Islay hasn't got enough fields to grow enough barley for the amount of whisky they make.
Right, okay.
So that will come in even from down south, down in England, but up in Orkney, the mainland, all over, and that will get shipped on. So somewhere like Kilchoman, they're a wee bit similar. They're doing, they're a single farm distillery, so they try and do as much as they can on site. They've still got a bit of barley brought in, but they've got an expression called 100% Islay, and that's 100% Islay. They grow all their barley on site, they distill it obviously, they mature it on site, they bottle it on site. It's 100% at the distillery. So it's really hard for distilleries to do it properly. Historically it's not been that big a thing, but it's increasingly becoming more of a thing. The provenance, the traceability of the ingredients, if that's what you're sort of asking.
Yeah, but I suppose a lot of Scottish produce, like producers, are getting into that because the competition, I suppose, with producing similar types of products at reduced labour costs, you know, if you outsource it and stuff. It's about, because we know from our own experience, you go out to, say, Harris, you get Harris, it's all that provenance about where it's come from. It's not just something that feels or looks the same, it's got that association, isn't it?
Well, that's the sort of the regionally protected designation, I suppose, and for whisky to have the definitions it has for Scottish whisky, it has to be 100% made in Scotland and matured in Scotland. You can't export a barrel of Scottish whisky that's completely Scottish and then bottle it, say, in Belgium, just to pick a random country, because then it's not fully Scottish. So it has to jump through certain hoops, meet certain standards. Single malt, single distillery, malted barley, 40% plus, 3 years minimum aged, all aged in Scotland. So that's your criteria, and that gives it your provenance of where it's from. Like your Harris tweed having to be all from Harris, your Astronomy Black Pudding. Incidentally, we've just sort of been around the Outer Hebrides on a little training run, myself and Mark, with a company that we work for, hence the Harris and the Lewis references.
It's a hard life, isn't
it? You've seen how hard a life it is. I'll pop a few photos on the screen that we've been taking as we've been going around some of the beaches. We don't need much persuasion to promote Scotland. You'll be the same. I mean, what a place. I don't say we're better than anyone else, but we are privileged to be ambassadors, tour guides in Scotland, with the landscape, the variety, the changeability, the history, the culture, the stories, the people, as rich and varied as anywhere, and an absolute privilege all times of year, all conditions. And we had all conditions when we were out doing the snow just today. Snow, hail, and tropical blue skies, blue seas. Wouldn't say it was warm at any point really, but it looked amazing. So
it looks warm.
Aye, it was lukewarm. Aye.
Oh, that's lovely. I don't think I've had a Jura before.
Well, they've got, I think, a 10-year-old,
and
they've got Journey, I think it is, and there's another one that's a core expression, non-age statement that you'll get quite a lot. This one's quite prevalent. I got it in Jura at the distillery thinking I was doing a good thing, and then next time I was in Asda, it was in Asda. I was like, I could have got it there, but this one's from the distillery. It's a wee bit better. But quite nice. Going to try a wee bit of water with it as well. I've now got my whisky tour guide Keith Pipette, so we're going back to a rudimentary spoon. You can still control the drips, but anyway. Let's open it out.
There's my enthusiasm straight away spotted, because I've just about scooped. No. Well,
often, one of the things I used to say with whisky, I still tell it when I'm telling people about drinking it, is you don't want to add too much water, because obviously you can't take it back out again. And then, as I say, I met a genius, and they said, no, always add too much water, because then you've got to add loads of whisky to get the balance right. So it just depends what way you look at it.
I must remember. Aye, good. Definitely have that again.
Very drinkable.
Yeah.
Very easy to drink. nothing too offensive. It's there's just a wee tingle. I wouldn't say smoky, but there's a wee sort of tingle to it.
What size of distillery is it? I mean, do you know, in terms of, compared to some of the others?
I really couldn't say. It's not the smallest, it's certainly not the biggest. I don't know, it's overall, I've got this again without looking up, and what I'll do, I'll say this and then I can put it on the screen later on when I'm editing the actual size, but I've got a wee inkling there's about 2.5 million litres a year.
Right.
And where that falls within the grand scheme of things, I think it's roughly sort of just below halfway.
Right.
I think, but I'm totally guessing it off the top of my head. If I'm anywhere close, I'll be very happy.
Right.
But I can look that up. But I love the wee distillery. I mean, Jura, the population I think is something like 196. It's just under 200.
Yeah.
And there's thousands of deer. The deer massively. The name Jura, I don't know if you know, comes from the Old Norse for deer. So it's like Deer Island effectively. So still loads of red deer. They actually, you'll get deer in Isla and deer in Jura sort of taunting each other, and they'll all actually swim across to challenge each other across the sound of Isla. Now I've not seen it, but I've heard that it happens. So a good old inter-island rivalry. Lovely island. You've got the Paps of Jura, utterly magnificent. When you're sailing across to Isla, that's the first thing you see is Jura. A good wee thing to do is go to YouTube and check out folk climbing the Paps of Jura, and they just look really quite imposing, quite intimidating, and amazing views.
Yeah. And what's the visitor centre like?
It's very nice. It's so sleepy and so quiet. To get there, you've got to go via Isla, really, and out of season, you'll struggle to get accommodation. You've got the one hotel right in front of the distillery. It's nice, it's snazzy enough, it's got nice presentations. Again, I'll stick a couple of photos up on the screen that we took when we were there. Super friendly. It was my birthday. Obviously, I made sure that she knew that, so she gave me a wee dram. I did a wee tasting video outside the distillery as well. It wasn't that one; it was a different expression. But it's worth a visit. It's very worth a visit. Nice wee drive along. So
very good.
So quite happy with that one.
Very nice. I'd definitely have that again.
Right, well, I'll get this down me, and then we can move on to our next one.
It just gets better.
It really is going to get better, because I know what's still to come. Excellent. Okay, so we're not just on the Whisky 2, we're on the Whisky 2, 3 and 4. Wee 3-pack here. So I picked this up on the Isle of Skye. Now, working in tourism as we do, Skye is unavoidable. You've been to Skye?
A few times now, quite a few times.
A few handfuls of times.
I love it though, because it is I mean, apart from the kind of history and stuff, the landscape itself is just amazing. It's like a movie set actually. And as you know, like Norfolk End and the Coolins down the south.
Well, funny you say that, because the other night I watched Stardust. Have you seen Stardust?
No.
Robert De Niro, Michelle Pfeiffer, and bits of it set on Skye.
Right.
So it is literally a movie set. I mean, we're tour guides. Where do you want to go? Isle of Skye. Why? Oh, I don't know. But they've heard about it. It's the age of Instagram, all that sort of stuff. And we like to complain about Skye, but it's an amazing place. Yeah. And then I'll complain about it for 10 minutes, and then but of course I was up there on holiday with the family last year. It's where we go on holiday when we're not working as well. So it's quite ridiculous.
Yeah.
When was the first time you went to Skye?
Oh, it was good. 25 years.
Before the bridge?
No, it must have been after the bridge.
25. 95 I think was the bridge.
95? What year are we in? It was the bridge hadn't long been open, mine. So it was way back then.
Did you stay over there or just visit?
No, I was staying in Kyle Local. So I didn't really get to absorb it properly. My kids were young as well at the time, so you're kind of distracted a bit by that. And you need to spend. That's true of anywhere you go. We were discussing it earlier. You need to spend and immerse yourself in a place to really get the feel of it. You can go in, fly and visit, 2 minutes off here, take a photograph, 2 minutes there, but you're not actually absorbing it the same.
Exactly. We've talked about it in doing what we do, visiting places 2-3 times a month, sometimes more, month after month and year after year. You get to know the place.
Yeah.
You'll never get to be from the place, but you get to know it and understand it a lot better than people that have been there for a day and a half and say, oh, I've done Skye. It's like, you've not done Skye. You went to a couple of places on a certain day in certain conditions. You've got to see it a lot longer. Again, when you're visiting, you're a tourist, you can't keep going. We're lucky what we do. Any favourite places in Skye? Anything?
I love Staffin Beach, the Kerrang, obviously up the north. The whole thing, even Nice Point, it's quite tricky to get out, to drive out there, as you know, but once you get out there and you're looking out over the Outer Hebrides as well, if you've got good weather, I just did a 4-day Skye not that long ago, and it was sunny, no wind, and hot. I got sunburned, and every day was the same. And I kept saying to the passengers, I said, "This, you're not getting the genuine, authentic Scottish experience here." And but what a magical place! But in some ways, it's it's true of a lot of places in Scotland. If the weather was like that all the time, we'd have 10 times the amount of people here, and the whole atmosphere of it would change again.
So that's sunburn in Scotland in April, just so you know.
I'm a ginger mind, I get sunburn in the reflection of a brake light, so.
I'll into that. So Staffin Beach, obviously quite well known for its dinosaur footprint. Skye's becoming known a bit as Scotland's dinosaur island, so Google Staffin dinosaur footprint. 150 million year old dinosaur footprint that you can put your foot in.
Done Skye as well. I've been taking my passengers out on the walk out there, and I've been very lucky actually. Every time I've gone out, the weather's been pretty good, But because of the history of that, and Skye, the female warrior who was an expert, I've never understood it though, because they keep on saying that she was an expert in Celtic martial arts, and I just have this straight, is that headbutt in? What is that? But I just have this image of this like kind of mad Scottish woman, and all the warriors in Scotland and Ireland are heading out there, and she's going, all you need to do is boom.
Close enough and sticking them.
But it's got a genuine, authentic feel. I've seen it with other places. I try and look out at different, not everyone's. You can get too many. You can get Old Castle Overload. But there's a place up in Caithness, just north of Wick, called Laphroaig Castle, and hardly anyone knows about it. It's right on the coast, but when you go out, when you get up to it, it's kind of sunk into the ground. But it's got original gargoyles and everything, on the masonry. And
do you know roughly when it dates back to?
It's round about 11th century. So it's been there for a long time. The Viking period. Mm-hmm. But and then just sit. I like going out. Again, it sounds a bit bizarre because we are meant to be engaging with other people all the time, which we do, and I enjoy that. But I quite like going out to these kind of historic sites as well, on my own, and just soaking up. We had a chance to do that today because it was so quiet the places we went,
Mm-hmm.
and so you get a greater sense of it,
Absolutely. Yeah. That's part of the attraction of a lot of places in Scotland, is you are off the beaten track and you are away from the madding crowd, I suppose. So getting back to Skye, so you mentioned the Kerrang, so the northeast of the island, the Trotternish Ridge, and some great views up there. Nice Point, so the most westerly point as well. I was out there last week as well. I'll go out as often as I can, not in bad weather, because people are dying. In good weather, it's just as good as it gets, and amazing views. But those three are quite well known, Staffin, Kerrang, Nice Point. It's interesting you say we've done Skye Castle. Everyone wants to go, and that's the thing with Skye. I'm always saying Skye, it's more than twice the size of Singapore. It's this massive island. Singapore's about 6 million population, Skye's about 10,000 population. There's so much room, there's so many things to do, and people just want to go to the top 5, the top 10 things. Done Skye Castle, I don't want to keep saying it in case you never know, but head south on Skye, and there's as many things to see and do, and the view of the Coolin Mountains for down there, to me, is seeing the Coolin for different angles, rather than just that. I mean, one of my favourite views in Scotland is when you're coming down from Portree towards the Coolin, but that's how you normally see them. But just going around them, it's just an amazing place physically.
Dunbeg Broch as well is quite good down as you're heading down there. And every time I've gone there, the sun's generally beginning to set. By the time you get up, you've got that view west. And again, if you get the right clouds, the right lighting, it's really atmospheric. You know?
So Dunbeg Broch, an old sort of broch, it's like a little sort of turret, and they're all pretty much in ruin now. But Dunbeg's one of the better preserved on Skye.
Yeah.
What I do when I'm taking people there is say, when you're going up, don't look back until you get there, because you've got amazing views out. It's Loch Bracadale, one of the sea lochs. You can see the cooling for there as well, and it's right across as far as the Outer Hebrides. So, and you'll never be there with more than one or two other cars.
Yeah.
And all the crowds will be up the Kerrang or at the Fairy Pools or wherever they go.
Oh, yeah.
So what we've got here, since we're talking a little bit of Skye, is Talisker Skye. At time of speaking to you, there are 2 distilleries in Skye. Toravaig is the newest one. Talisker dates back to 1830, established 1830. So out of the core range, we've got 3 here. We've got the Talisker 10-year-old, Talisker Storm, and Talisker Skye. So Storm and Skye are 2 non-age statements. And I often tell people, if you're tasting whisky, the best way to do it is side by side, compare them to each other. So we'll see what we think of the core range of the Talisker. So Talisker Skye, they're all the same percentage, 45.8%. I'll just double check that's true. 10, that's that. So that's what they bottle them at. Now again, off the top of my head, I've got a wee sneaky suspicion when you get down to that percentage wise, you can add water and it doesn't cloud, so you don't have to chill filter them. If you chill filter and you add water, it's not going to cloud. If it's unchill filtered and you add water, it can go cloudy, but I think that's above a certain percentage. So I'm going to make a guess that that's why it's 45.8%. So Talisker Skye, have you tried some Taliskers before?
Yeah, a long time ago, but
Okay, we're going to. So these are maybe a wee bit more smoky than the Jura that we've just tried. Certainly the 10 is. So I'll be nosing. I definitely smell more strength than it smells stronger than the Jura. It doesn't smell quite nice. A wee hint of smoke, a wisp of smoke. There's not too much going on.
I thought it was slightly smokier than the Jura. That might just be my nose.
We're wearing a black house today.
Yeah.
The peat fire burning. Oh, that's really. That's very peaty. I wouldn't even say too smoky. It's got that earthiness. It's got a real pepperiness to it as well. It's very tongue tingle.
It's nice though. I quite like that.
It has got a decent peppery kick, but it's more or less all it's got. I'm not too sophisticated. I'm not usually too picky with my smoky ones, as long as they're smoky. But it's good.
It has got a kick, but it smooths off, I think. Do you know?
There's just a wee bit of sort of lemoniness a bit behind it.
It's
lemony smoky.
And it goes soft. It's nice.
Yeah. If you bought me one, I would be quite happy. Not getting any sort of maltiness or anything like that. With a non-age statement, you might sometimes expect just almost to be a little bit lacking in maturity, but I'm not getting anything too young about it. If you bought me one of these blind, I'd struggle to differentiate with just a standard sort of Isla.
Yeah.
It's not got the full strength of a Laphroaig or a Ardbeg, and it's not quite got the sort of creaminess or the width of a Bowmore or a Cairdeas, so it's somewhere in between. It's got I'm getting more a sort of smoky meatiness now with the water in it. A wee bit sort of bacony almost.
No, it's not going cloudy.
So that's backing up my potential theory or hypothesis.
I like that. I still prefer that. I think if it was between that and the Jura, I would take the Jura. But I think that's quite nice as well.
It's more an experience, it's more of a hit. The Jura's more drinkable, more gentle. I think I like that a bit more with the water as well. It's quite interesting. I usually like my drams neat. So up on Skye. Now, Skye is quite acute, working in tourism. What's your take on Skye, infrastructure-wise, problems, solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose when you're going there regularly, this is true. I've had to catch myself a couple of times going to places and thinking, aye, it's nice and that, and but when you hear people in the back who have never seen it before going, wow, look at that, you know, and then you have to kind of snap yourself a bit and say, actually, it is amazing. But saying that, compared to other places, Skye has a high level of tourism. The bridge is obviously added to that, and the state of the roads at the moment are horrendous. There's a problem. There's a wider infrastructural problem in terms of lack of accommodation, especially in hospitality, because there's just not the accommodation. I think there was something like, I read somewhere there was like 400 hospitality vacancies on Skye, and the reason they're not being filled, or a large reason they're not being filled, is because there's not the accommodation, the affordable accommodation. If you're working in hospitality, generally your income's slightly, well, not slightly, a good bit lower. It's right down at the low end, but there just isn't the accommodation, and that's a huge problem. Public toilets, which, as we know, travelling about, people are not interested in castles or mountains or even dolphins if they're absolutely desperate for the toilet. Yes. They need to have a toilet. And you compare it to the Outer Hebrides, for example. We've been going around Harris and Lewis, and it's just like chalk and cheese compared to Skye.
Incredible. Obviously, two different councils. Surely similar sort of resources, similar strains on resources with tourism and visitors, but there's less visitors in Outer Hebrides and more facilities, right. And they're swamped on Skye, and somehow they can't even provide basic amenities.
But even in Broadford there, I was on 4-day Skye.
So Broadford's the second biggest town in Skye, so you think it should go. Aye.
And they do have public toilets there, but drove up, they're closed. And they're in the process of building new toilets. So I'd gone in and spoke to the manager in one of the local shops there, and I said, what's the story with the toilets? And he says, oh, they're building the new toilets, but there was no work actually going on. They were still not open, still got the fencing around them. And I thought, would it not have been a good idea to keep the old toilets open until the new toilets are ready? But no. And then what do? Because if you've got passengers who need to go, you either head up to the Schlig and hope you can get into the hotel, but then you're encouraging them then to go in and have a drink or have a meal or whatever, or you head back and do the drops early. I mean, it's just shocking, and it leaves a really bad impression as well on passengers.
And if it's the only toilet and you go there and it's closed, there are no other options. It's not like there's 2 or 3 toilets in the same town. It's been chronic on Skye. About 3 or 4 years ago, there were no toilets north of Portune on a Sunday. There was no public toilets. They were talking about closing the ones at Uig, which are a godsend. They're some of the most horrible toilets you'll ever go into, but they're toilets. Yeah. It really is. It's quite chronic. I always say I can tell you all the problems on Skye. I struggle to get the solutions, but there needs to be some sort of manager devoted to understanding the problems and able to say, right, put porta cabins in until there's a permanent solution, something like that.
Well, I used to work with a local authority up in Orkney, and I mean, apart from anything, Scotland has its own dedicated tourism minister. We've got dedicated council services. I mean, what's going on? You hear the elected representatives of all parties saying how important tourism is to Scotland, and yet they're not willing to. And tourism is bringing in millions and millions of pounds to the country, and we need it, especially at this time after lockdown. We need that kind of commitment to it. But we're seeing it. I mean, in the Scottish Borders, for example, the council there has just announced it's going to close half of its public toilets. It's actually going the other direction, and you think, look, do you want a tourism industry or don't you? Because if you do, you're going to have to invest in it, you know.
In the basics.
And those are the basics.
Yeah.
You know, those are the basics. I mean, I carry, when I go, I recently acquired a roof tent, and but in my trailer for the car, and I've got this trailer with it. You know, it's a little bit, it's a little bit as far removed from wild camping. It is kind of glamping in a way, you know. Yeah. But I've got a portable toilet, so I've got a pop-up, you know, tent thing, and I put this toilet, it's environmentally disposable toilet thing. I'm not going into details, but it's highly effective. And you know, maybe is that where we're heading? We're going to have to
bring your own toilet.
No, bring our own toilets, and you know, you get pop up. Oh, damn, I need the toilet. Oh, there's nothing open. Right, okay, into the back, pop-up tent, 50 pence, 50 pence, please. You know, but we shouldn't be doing that. The infrastructure should be there. That's basic. It's basic stuff, you know.
We were at a place called Rogie Falls the other day, so they've got toilets. They're not always open, but they were open. So pre-lockdown, they got rid of the sinks. There was no running water, and there was a sign up saying something that there was hand sanitizer, and it was because you didn't need water to wash your hands. So well, every other toilet seems to think you need sinks to wash your hands, and this is revolutionary. And then lockdown came along, and then they were just closed for a while in between times. And when I went another day, I was quite surprised to see they'd reinstalled taps in the sinks. It shouldn't be complicated to provide. I know there's costs, but whether it's a tourist tax, whether it's a camper van tax, whether it's putting 2p on everyone's tax per year in Scotland, whatever it takes to just give us toilets, give our visitors toilets. It's pretty embarrassing. What would you say? Something like Skye becoming a national park? Do you think that would be a solution, and having its own, almost not quite independent, but it becomes much more control over its own, managing its own resources and its own needs? Yeah,
I mean, it needs. I think there should be more national parks. That's my personal view. We discussed about various other aspects.
We've got two in Scotland just now, Cairdeas and Laphroaig. I'm surprised. I mean, we've essentially got national parks that just aren't called national parks. The amount of wild space we've got.
Yeah, but I mean, the designation alone isn't enough. You know, it needs coordination. It needs planning and stuff, and a drive and force, a genuine commitment. I don't want to use that horrible dried up phrase of joined up working and all the rest, but you need. I think you actually need a designated agency or somebody accountable anyway to say, right, your job is to improve this. Here are the objectives. Right, get on with it.
Another thing I would think this, because we're out and about and we're tour guides. It's not an inflated sense of self, but the amount of experience, day to day, front end, customer facing experience that we've got. Ask us, what do you need? Yeah. Now, the trouble is with tour guides, you get 10 tour guides in a room, you ask one question, you'll get 10 answers. But 6 or 7 of those will be valid answers. We need a lay-by here for a viewpoint, we need a cafe here, we need a specific charge here, we need toilets here, whatever it is, but and speak to the people on the ground, at the coalface, so to speak, every day. I'll give you a bit of water just to rinse out there. Righty-ho, so I quite like that. The Talisker Skye, so we'll put some Talisker Storm in our glasses now and see.
Beware the gathering storm. There's a phrase that might get you arrested. Be more careful.
So have you got a favourite Scottish island?
Oh, well, I recently discovered off the coast of East Lothian, there's a little island there called Hirst Rocks. But I've not been there, and when I looked on Google Maps, it looks a bit desolate and barren.
All right.
And I've not really been motivated to go.
Covered in bird shit or something.
So, a favourite island.
Where about, like near the Bash Rock, or where about?
No, it's further around. It's away past Dunbar as you're heading down towards St Abbs and that. It's basically, it's like a skerry. It's more of a skerry than an island, but
you're just going to have to go out and plant a flag and claim it.
So I did notice that. No, but I suppose, let me think.
Well, my favourite town in Scotland is Keith, so
Aye.
that's the same sort of thing, for one reason only.
Aye. A favourite island. Let me think. That's a good question. I spent a lot of time. You know, I was an islander for a while up in Orkney.
Yes, of course. Were you on mainland for the whole time?
No, I was. I spent a long time in Westray, in a little island called Bury, which is just to the south of mainland, and then latterly, when I was working there, I was in Kirkle. I was in the town.
Mm-hmm. What did you do up there?
I was a reporter for STV News. Prior to that, I was head of communications for the council.
Which rings it? Your first ever news story up there?
Well, actually, that was quite. First news story. My cameraman Ken said, "Grab your jacket. A walrus has turned up on a beach in North Ronaldsay," and I thought, this is a wind up. You know how? You know what I mean? Scots.
Junior first in the door.
So anyway, made a couple of calls, and I was a bit panicky about it because, well, it was my first in front of camera news report, you know. So I phoned the Marine Life Rescue people down in St Andrews. They've got a dedicated team of marine vets that deal with strandings. Actually, I dealt with them before because I'd been on just a day out on myself to Crail, and I came across a striped dolphin that had stranded itself. Unfortunately, they weren't able to help it, but I called them out then, so that's how I knew about it. Anyway, I said to them, I says, how close can I get to this walrus and be safe, you know, because I knew I was going to have to do a piece to camera with the thing behind me. And they said, well, it's normal predators of polar bears and killer whales, so you should be alright. But I was looking down at my stomach at the time and thinking, well, I hope it doesn't mistake me for that. Anyway, so I went out, and sure enough, the walrus was there, so I ended up doing a piece to camera. But as I knelt down in front of it, I said to Ken, my cameraman, I says, listen, Ken, remember, and I was serious, like, because it's a large animal when you see it up close. You know? I said, Ken, remember and give me a signal if it starts, you know, it was on its back, but if it creeps over. And he said, my signal will be me running as fast as I can in that direction, which wasn't the most reassuring, you know.
Sacrificing you.
But it was such an unusual story. It ended up in the main ITN News at 10 for the UK. You know, it was the Rand Finally piece. Mm-hmm. So that was it. But those islands are really interesting. They're really small islands. I've got a remarkable amount of history. Papa Westray had the last giant auk was shot there in 1813. So giant auk's basically a giant penguin. And so we did a report on that. We actually flew out on the shortest scheduled flight. We had a replica.
Flightless? Or?
No, it was flightless, yeah. But it stood about this high off the ground, you know, it was quite a large bird. But it was a spoof done in, I think it was in the 70s or early 80s. Local guys had put together a replica giant auk, but made out of seagull feathers, and then basically suckered the Fleet Street press to fly 2 days. Well, it took them 2 days to get up from London, and then they realised, it's a hoax, you know. So we used the hoax bird for this news report to celebrate the 200 or commemorate the 200th anniversary of the Great Auk. But the trouble, I think, is it's quite a difficult place, the islands, to live, and that's true up in the Hebrides as well. The winters are you've got a short daylight up in Orkney. It sometimes can't get light until around about 10 in the morning. Mm-hmm. Dark again at 3. Constant buffeting of storms coming off the North Atlantic. Lots of storms.
There was one, you might know the details better than me, it might have been around about 1950-ish, but they lost some like 20,000 hens overnight. Just all the hens got blown away in gale force winds one night. So,
well, one thing that people say about Orkney is, the first thing they say, there's no trees. And I say, what are you talking about? It's got tens and tens of thousands of trees. But they're all in Norway. They've been blown there by the prevailing wind, you know.
That's the way the wind goes as well. It is.
So anyway, we still not answered that question. You know, my favourite island I do like the islands on the wet. Like, this is my first time out to Stornoway, and I really love it. You know, I mean, those beaches we were at today. I mean, you know, like if you were just to look at the still photographs. It looks really, really warm and inviting, but obviously a little bit of cold wind and take the face off you, you know.
Yeah.
And I could imagine this place being properly wild during the winter if you get a force 10 coming off the North Atlantic, you know.
That's one thing, we don't come out here in the winter or up to Orkney, obviously you will live there for winters, but you're in Skye all year round, you get to know that, but you don't get to know the more extreme out Hebrides or up in the Orkney Islands. There's a funny wee nose on this that I can't quite put my finger on.
Yeah.
It's almost a wee sort of damp, probably a bit rotting somehow, I don't know. But it's a bit, I don't want to say blander. It is blander, but bland's the wrong word. It's a bit less tasty. I mean, that was a smoky experience, the first one, the Skye.
I thought the first one was better.
Yeah,
I don't know. Is that meant to be more exclusive in the range? Yeah?
No, I think they're just two non-age statements. They're in their core range. The trouble for a lot of distilleries is demand is really high.
Yeah.
They've all got 10, 12, 15-year-olds as their core expressions, and they can't wait that long to bring them out. So a lot of them have diversified in bringing out the non-age statements.
Right.
Younger whisky has still got to be at least 3 years old, but that would be like say 5 to 7 years old.
Aye.
And that allows them to release younger whisky, which annoys the purists. Bottom line, taste it.
Yeah.
If you like it, it's good. If you don't, try another one. So you get some really good non-age statements.
Arran.
Favourite island?
Aye.
Right.
Just come to me.
Scotland in miniature.
It is. I like the South End, and part of the reason I used to go there at Hogmanay, and they've got a real wild kind of party thing going at Hogmanay. I'm kind of past that. I'm way past the age for enjoying that kind of thing anymore. And but I did go there. I went there regularly at Hogmanay, and I just liked the vibe about it. I like the people. I like the vibe. Yeah, Arran, I would say. Sorry about that.
That's totally fine. I've not been to Arran yet. It's one of a few. We do tours there, and it's one of the few tours I don't do. So
yeah.
it's absolutely.
No, it's definitely worth it. Yeah.
The hit list. There's 2 distilleries now on Arran. So again, 2 more reasons why I need to go.
Yeah.
But so my folks were there last week. I've not actually seen them since they came back. But
it's relatively easy if you live in the Central Belt or in the south of Scotland. It's relatively easy to get to as well, compared to like you've not got the massive drive up and stuff.
Yeah.
But it has that kind of Western Isles feel about it as well. Like I say, I've not been over for a while though, so maybe it's changed a bit, but.
How long is the ferry across?
It's about an hour and a half.
Right, you get a couple of ferries, but
about an hour and a half, something like that. Yeah.
Definitely have to do that.
Yeah.
Very good. So you prefer the Skye to the Storm? Have you added any water yet?
Not yet. No.
I'm not too. I wouldn't say not too keen on it, but not as keen on it as it was. So yeah, Talisker Skye is in the lead out of these ones at the moment. I'll talk about whisky. It's not just as much about the taste; it's as much about the experience. And this one, I'm getting right on the outside, and I'm not getting much in the middle.
Aye.
Quite narrow in a wide sort of way, if that doesn't.
It's quite bland, isn't it? Look, you compare it. That other one had the kind of like a proper kick, and then for me anyway, it smoothed out at the end. But this.
Yeah. There's almost nothing in the middle of this one. It's got a wee bit around the outside, and yeah.
It's not a storm, is it?
No, it's
barely a breeze.
It's a disappointing squall, but Talisker disappointing squall. It probably wouldn't fit in the label.
And Drake probably wouldn't be a good promotional.
Talisker wet day. But hey, it's whisky, so what can you do?
I mean, I don't find it. I don't find it disgusting or anything. It's really nice, and I'm going to drink it.
Yeah,
but it's just when you get the contrast, when you compare.
If you go to the bar next and say, "Do you want one?" Well, what else is there? It's okay with the Talisker Storm. Right, Right, so 2 down, 1 to go. Have you been to the new Talisker? Not the new visitor centre at Talisker?
I've been to the new visitor centre. It's quite nice actually.
Opened in 2022. We're speaking to you in 2023. Yeah, I mean it's the ideal. It's a big bad beast. People complain, but I see there's always pluses and minuses. And one of the pluses is they can invest, and they've made a much bigger, all singing, all dancing visitor centre. Used to be too small. Skye being as busy as it is, Talisker would just get swamped. The staff would get angry. It was just it was too much. So
you maybe be able to confirm this, but they've got a big distribution centre down in Methil, on the outskirts of Methil in Fife. And I'd heard a story, and I don't know if it's true, but I'd heard it from one of the other guys, and you know how reliable they can sometimes be.
100% reliable.
That the store, the warehouse there, got broken into by 3 local guys in a van. And they went round the back and loaded the van. You know, I don't know what they did, but they managed to get in, loaded the van. But then to celebrate them loading, because obviously it's quite a hard job, they decided to partake of some of the stolen goods, although they hadn't left the compound at this point. Anyway, one thing led to another, and they were woken up very hungover the next morning. They're probably the most incompetent. It wasn't like Brinks Mart or anything like that. Have you heard of that story?
No, not in Methil.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Definitely true, of course. When I'm on Isla, there's one over there, and it again probably transfers to all distilleries, but I think it was the old Portellan distillery. They had a problem with the roof in the warehouse, so they got a couple of local guys in to fix the roof, and they literally hatched a plan and built a secret hatch into the roof. So they fixed the roof, they went away, a couple of weeks later they came back at the weekend, dropped down and let them sort the warehouse, and apparently whether it was the exertion or the excitement, one of them just took a heart attack and died on the spot. So his mate's now in the warehouse, like, what'll I do? Phone an ambulance, drink whiskey, bolts. So they come in on the Monday morning, and here's a dead guy in the middle of the warehouse. Like, how did that happen? So again, hearsay. Half truth. I'm not quite sure.
There is something in Scottish culture, though, isn't there, about like sticking one to the man by stealing whiskey, or like having something, you know, like I'm not advocating criminality, but
there should almost be a bylaw that there's a period of grace if it's available, and you should be given 12 hours head start or something. It's Whisky Galore, I suppose, with the famous film. Another one. And this isn't an actual story. It was a guy who worked at a distillery, an industrial accident. He fell into a big vat of whiskey and drowned. So they've had to phone his wife and say, like, we're really sorry, but it's bad news. I'm afraid to inform you that your husband has died. He fell into a vat of whiskey and he drowned. And she's like, oh, do you know if he suffered? And they're like, well, he got out 3 times to go to the toilet.
So he wanted to
I think he suffered. He was quite happy. He fell in 4 times. So right. Talisker 10. So we're used to the Isle of Skye, Slange. Yes, and all who sail in it. So this is they're long established. The Storm and the Skye, they must be 7 or 8 years old, I think, since they launched them, brought them out. I may be wrong, I'll correct things on the screen if necessary. Talisker 10 is their flagship brand, has been for a long time, so this should be better, whatever that means, than the other ones.
Smells better.
It's got less offensiveness about it. It's got much more maturity. Right, you've got to sniff it more to get more out of it almost.
Is it me or is it quite smoky, that one?
Yeah. No, it's quite smoky. I'm, as I always say in my videos, I'm a bit of an island head. I love my smoke and my dirt and my earthiness and the whiskey. So for me, it's quite a mild one. But it's got more. I'd say more of a balanced smoke. As I say, the Storm was on the outside. The Skye was a bit one-dimensional in the smokiness. It's absolutely there without being too strong. It's still got that peppery heat, but it's much more balanced. It's flatter somehow and wider. It's like a nice disc of smoky whiskey.
Yeah.
And it's got the strength as well. It's not too peppery, too overpowered. Much more well balanced.
Yeah.
I would say. Now, talking about Skye, surrounding areas, we drive up from Edinburgh. Do you do all your tours out of Edinburgh?
Yeah.
I've done tours out of Glasgow now and again, out of Aberdeen, but mostly based out of Edinburgh. So when we were heading up to Skye, can't really speak to yourself without tiptoeing into the political sort of area. So there's a place that we pass on the way up to Skye, a little memorial cairn. You know what I'm talking about. Have you anything to say about, or what have you got to say about Willie McCrae? So Willie McCrae, for anyone who doesn't know, SNP, died in mysterious circumstances in the mid-1980s, and he was a bit of an agitator against the then UK government on a couple of fronts. He was anti-nuclear. One of his most famous quotes, I love quoting, the Margaret Thatcher government were investing in nuclear energies. They closed down the pits, the coal mines, the traditional sort of energy sources, and they were investing in nuclear technology. Nuclear, all very well, but you end up with nuclear waste. And the Thatcher's government were trying to bury it in the far-flung reaches of the UK, brackets Scotland, and McCrae was taking them on through the courts. And one of his great quotes, a great public speaker, he said that if Margaret Thatcher is looking for somewhere to bury her nuclear waste, she can bury it where Guy Fawkes hid his gunpowder. And so it sums up the man. So we don't want it. If you want it, you can have it, you can sit on it. So yes, so Willie McCrae, I tell the story. What's your take on it? Tell the story.
I first heard, I was only 15 when Willie was found. He was found dead. Well, he wasn't found dead, he was still alive. So basically what happened was, Willie McCrae, as you said, was a prominent lawyer. He had a right character, a right presence about him. And but he was very much a nationalist. He'd actually worked with British intelligence during the Second World War, and he was quite eccentric as well. But as you said, touched on the anti-nuclear stuff. It was through his work that he'd established that the British government had plans to bury their nuclear waste in Mulwacker down in the southwest. And so apparently a couple of nights before this incident that took place up in the Highlands, just north of between Steenbridge and Kyle Lochalsh, Willie had a house in Dorney, and
Dorney's near Eileandon and Castle, so just an excuse to put Eileandon on the screen, but
he was heading out. So he'd phoned a couple of friends and said, "I've got them, I've nailed them on this," So he was doing a lot of research in his own time. He had been aligned, he'd been given legal advice to a radical Scottish nationalist organisation called Shield and Gale. He'd also given advice to another organisation called SNLA, the Scottish National Liberation Army, who many people believe was a mere front by the British to discredit the main nationalist movement. But he was also on the SNP's NEC committee. Now, long and the short of it was, in April 1985, he left. He had a home in Glasgow. He had a tenement on the south side of Glasgow. Left home. It subsequently emerged that a special branch had him under surveillance as a subversive. And they said that they followed him out, initially out, and...
my understanding of it was that as he was leaving Glasgow, he visited a shop, got his cigarettes and his whiskey, and got speaking to a local bobby who was walking by, and the policeman had observed them being observed by.
And the registration plates that were recorded were subsequently proved to be special branch cars. So undercover police officers had him under surveillance. So he was a big whiskey drinker. Now, unfortunately for Willie, he had a previous conviction for drink driving as well. You see, so he really liked his drink. Not justifying drink driving, but one of the arguments. See, that this goes. The reason I mention it is the Crown argument was, so he heads out of Glasgow. Special branch say they lose him on the outskirts of Glasgow, even though they know that he's got a house up in Dorney and he's evidently heading north.
Right.
So he heads up,
but he has been witnessed being tailed out of Glasgow.
Aye, and
I
these
didn't
cars.
know they denied that they're following him, or said they'd only followed him so far. I didn't know that part.
Aye, they admitted that he had been under surveillance, but they lost him that day on the outskirts of Glasgow. But obviously, it wouldn't take the brains of an archbishop to work out if he's heading north, he's heading to his holiday home, you know. So anyway, the long and the short of it was the following day, SNP councillor, purely coincidence, an SNP councillor called Davy Coots and two Australian tourists who were on holiday, obviously in Scotland, had stopped at a lay-by and noticed a vehicle off the road, which was a burgundy Volvo, had come off the road and was facing up towards the road. They made their way down, and inside they found the unconscious Willie McRae. Now initially it looked like a simple car accident, so obviously they called the emergency services. Willie was taken to Raigmore in Inverness, and on arrival in Raigmore, when they examined him, they discovered a shotgun wound to the back of his head, near his ear. Now Willie was known to carry a firearm. He was a very eccentric guy, you know, Willie McRae. He was quite eccentric, so but he was obviously he'd worked in British intelligence during the war, so he knew what they were capable of. So his friends have argued that he was carrying this weapon for self-defence in case there'd been another appeared in Spycatcher, the MI6 disclosed, the MI5 guy who blew the whistle on security intelligence services thing. There was a Peter close. You'll have to put that on the screen. I can't remember. You're close to us, Peter.
Wilson, right? Oh, yeah.
Peter Wright.
Peter Wright. Yeah.
So anyway, a nuclear campaigner in England had been murdered by the security services, according to Peter Wright. When they were bugging her home, she'd come in and she was quite feisty, had attacked them. She was an old woman, she was a pensioner in her like 70s, and during the struggle, whatever happened, she was killed, you see. So Willie knew this woman, so a lot of his friends have argued he was carrying this weapon in case there was any jiggery-pokery. Okay. But so his body's, he's recovered, but he dies the next day. He never regains consciousness. He dies the next day. The official account of how he met his end was in a fit of depression. In a fit of depression, whilst driving north, he shot himself in the head whilst driving. That's the official account.
Oh, right, okay. I thought it was
came off the road.
Right, okay.
Some people argued. So the forensics later established the gun had been fired twice. Mm-hmm. So he is shot with his gun. Mm-hmm. But why the gun was fired twice, we don't know. Some people have speculated that he came off the road, he'd been drinking the whiskey that he bought in Glasgow, came off the road and realising that he was potentially looking at being struck off as a lawyer, and also potentially because it was a second offence, a severe penalty from the courts, that in a fit of depression he shot himself. Although why he would shoot, why he would fire twice. So there's a lot of, immediately there's mystery in what's actually happened here. The other thing is, at some point on that journey up north, his spare wheel was found, he obviously had to change the tyre at some point, so that was found, the flat tyre was found in the back seat. The other thing was his papers were all missing. The papers that he carried with him at all times as part of this investigation into the Mulwacker inquiry, which exposed that the British government were secretly planning to dump all the nuclear waste in Scotland. Those were gone as well. So there was immediately suspicion about that whole thing. Now, the Scottish National Party at the time, because Willie was a prominent SNP member, they lobbied very hard to get a public inquiry into what would happen, but there was no inquiry held. On the back of that, Winnie Ewing, senior statesman within the SNP, a former lawyer herself, launched her own investigation, and her conclusion was that Willie did not commit suicide, that there was third parties. Now, I've actually spoken to Winnie about this directly, and her thinking was that, as well as all this other stuff, because Willie had his hands in a lot of different pies, he was looking at drunk running down from Carroll Loch into the inner cities, Glasgow and Edinburgh.
Coming into the sea like.
Aye, so that there was a number, it wasn't necessarily political,
but there was enough.
There was an element, but there was enough confusion. Was it drug dealers who were getting, like, this guy's causing us problems here? or so he had a lot of enemies basically. Is what I'm saying.
That's where it is, and you'll know it's about as remote a spot as you'll get. The sort of banks of Loch Lomond. The 2 or 3 other wee things that I've heard or read about it was when he left, when the policeman, as he came out of the shop with his whiskey and his fags into his car, the policeman's helped him, and Willie McKay's had his briefcase with him.
Yeah.
And he said, "I've got them now. I've got them now." And the
which
policeman understood
confirms what he was saying in phone calls. Yeah.
And then that briefcase was missing when he was found, and just that alone, if that's exactly the case, did he chuck that out the window before he shot himself? Exactly. Another wee thing with it is there's 2 locations for where his car was found. The first one, the Australian tourist says when they stopped, they could see a car about halfway between the road and Loch Lomond.
Yeah. And
he needed to use his binoculars to see, and then he noticed there was somebody slumped over the steering wheel. Where that's when the SNP council and the nurse then came along and they got him out and away. And then once they discovered the bullet wound in the hospital, they'd already removed the car.
Yeah.
And then the car was replaced for potential crime scene
yeah.
Photographs, and that's the photographs you can find online. But the Australian tourist says that is not where they found it, because where the car is in those photos, you would not need binoculars to see. So, and also the 2 sites are either side of a government boundary, so 2 different police forces, different. So there's all this sort of stuff exactly. Swirling about it as well. So
I mean, I spoke to Kenny McCaskill when he was Justice Minister. He reopened the case because a nurse came forward who said she was at Raigmore that night, and she says there was 2 bullet wounds in the back of his head. Now, there was nothing to fit, and it's very hard. You see, what's made it more complicated is Willie's brother, so the family, his immediate next of kin, didn't want any fuss. Willie was a homosexual, and this had come out in some of the press reports following his death. And in the mid 1980s, the family were the family were slightly, but they just wanted it to go away. He was a controversial political figure anyway, but they didn't want any fuss, and they didn't want he's been murdered and what that might mean. It was easier for them to just accept, I think, in my view, that the official account. Even though there's so many questions about the official report, the official account of it, But I spoke to John Finney as well, who was an SNP MSP. He left the SNP over the stance on NATO, joining NATO, and he joined the Greens. John was a former policeman in Northern Constabulary at the time, and he's absolutely convinced that Willie did not commit suicide as well. He says it needs a lot more, it needs a fresh inquiry into it. The other thing was about Willie was his partner, his legal partner. There was serious questions about him, whether he was informing on Willie to the security services. There's been some suspicion of that. There's some irregularities in their accounts as well. Now, I actually managed to track the guy down. He's now working as a lecturer out in one of the Gulf states, and he didn't want to say anything. He didn't want his name mentioned. He didn't want to even mention. You're getting the exclusive here. He didn't even want to mention that he was in the Gulf states. But there was something particular. There was a lot. I heard from numerous sources when I was working as a journalist that there was something about him that didn't quite add up. Whether he was tipping the police off while he's left tonight, he's heading up to, who knows? Certainly suggestions that he was some kind of informant.
Chuck in the word allegedly now.
Allegedly.
I think so.
Allegedly.
But I think what is clear is there's a lot of unanswered questions, and that whips up conspiracy theories, and it needs properly investigated. And my dad, who I was too young, it didn't cross my radar when I was that age, and I went and read up about it all and looked into it, and I said to my dad's generally quite, don't rock the boat, everything, it's okay, official party line almost a little bit. It's like, Dad, the whole Willie McKay thing at the time, what's your take on it? And he said there was a lot more to that than what came out at the time. So, and that's, as I say, a relatively, in my opinion, a balanced take on it. So It really could. I mean, the longer it goes, the more people are lost in accounts or hazy and stuff. But it needs some sort of more definitive. If nothing else, to quell the conspiracy stuff. It was that it did happen this way. Used the evidence or.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of questions. I've tried to go like kind of open mind about it. He had suffered from depression. That is true. He was a member of choice organisation. Choosing your own time of death. So not a suicide organisation, but a pro end of life society. But the interesting thing about it, there was a documentary made in the 1980s, and which I uploaded to the internet, which is still available on YouTube. And there's a guy who was somewhere. So there was a guy in there who was a member of the society. Says, yes, we advocated end of life choices, but not violent choices. So you might take your own life, but you're not going to blow your brains out.
In a chair by the fire with a nice dram, not in a cold winter's night in the middle of the high.
So many unanswered questions about Willie. We could talk about that all night.
Where the cairn is, there's a lay-by nearby you can park in, but the cairn, they built a ditch so you can't actually park. They say, who are they? So it's a wee bit of a hassle to get to.
There was an annual memorial service taking place. Actually, the very first time the cairn was unveiled, I was the first person to lay a wreath to Willie. That was in 1989. The original cairn was built. It was subsequently taken down by the council and then re-erected after a bit of an outcry.
Right. So I'll get some photos on the screen. I was there just 2 or 3 months ago. I like telling the story. If I've got the right group, the right crowd, and the last final wee thing I think was his gun was found something like 50 feet away from the car.
Yeah.
So he's decided to end it all, shot himself in the back of the head as you do, threw his gun as far as away he could, and then slumped over the steering wheel.
Although in fairness, I would say, given the repositioning of the car, when they realised he'd been shot, and it wasn't just a simple road accident. It could be that the car was further down. That might have explained, if you follow the suit. But again, that's something that needs proper investigation. And where was the car? Where exactly was the position of the vehicle? Why? And also in shotgun, I interviewed somebody about this pathologist, a forensic pathologist, and he says normally in a shot. No, I'm not going into too much detail, but to shoot yourself back. Imagine you're driving. And you're thinking, I've had enough. It makes no sense.
Or explain how it makes sense. To the layman, it doesn't scan.
No.
Yes. So
a bit of dark subject.
Absolutely, but I mean, in tourism and tour guiding, we talk about historical massacres and murders and backstabbings and betrayals. And okay, this is relatively modern, people are still alive, 1985, but it becomes part of the fabric of what we do, where we go, and the places we go.
Well, there's a saying in Scottish storytelling, isn't there, that it's not a proper Scottish story unless it has a terrible and tragic ending.
Yes, and this is not going to be a happy experience. And then they died.
Yeah. But that probably is the reason we have such a dark sense of humour. A lot of people come into Scotland struggle a bit when, because it's like what might be described as barrack hall humour or dark humour, black humour.
Gallows humour.
Yeah. And but then we've got the weather to contend with, we've got an invading nation next door. There's a lot of reasons why we have to laugh in the face of adversity.
And if we're left to our own devices, we're happy to fight amongst ourselves.
Or our shadow.
Yes.
Anyway.
Right, back to the whisky. Talisker 10. I'm enjoying this one much more. I'm getting a wee bit of fruity, lemony freshness off it as well. With the water, I've added a wee bit of water. Out of the 3, I'm going for the Talisker 10.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, trumps it.
It sort of backs up the...
I wonder if we tried them in the reverse order, would we be thinking that?
Or even I get the stickers off the bottle. What one do you prefer? If you don't blind tasting. Well, that's for next year. We'll do that another time. We'll be blind tasting. So... excellent. A wee bit of Scottish political intrigue for you there. Some Skye whisky from Talisker.
Fantastic.
and that will take us on to our final dram of the evening. Right, Theo. So a wee recap of the Jura. Quite happy with the Jura?
Very happy, yeah.
Very happy. Jura red wine cask finish, whisky number one. Out of the 3 Taliskers, what was your ranking? What was your order?
Aye, definitely the 10, Talisker 10, top of the list, and then it was just straight Talisker, was it?
The Skye and the Storm.
Skye, and then the Storm would be third.
That was the same with you, So it's unusual that you get people agreeing on stuff. But either you go Talisker 10, Talisker Skye, Talisker Storm. Skye was okay, Storm a bit disappointing, 10 perfectly fine.
They were all good, I have to say, but the Talisker 10, definitely.
Excellent, right, well, we're going to banish the word good, because we're going to move up a little notch. There's another bottle has dropped into our orbit. Have you got a favourite distillery?
Really like...
Do you think a favourite distillery you've visited and a favourite distillery to drink?
Aye, well, I used to think for a long time my favourite whisky was Dalwhinnie, and I think in terms of distillery, it's not. I don't think the visitor centre's that great. But this is just personal view. I don't think it's that great. I was surprised to learn recently. I hadn't realised it's often called the ladies' whisky. Have you heard of this? Dalwhinnie?
No.
The Winter Gold. I think it's quite a mild whisky, but I got introduced to it by a BBC journalist who's now long retired, a guy called Kit Fraser.
Good name.
We were at
Kit Fraser.
Yeah, it was Fraser. He lives out in Dunbar, Kit now. But anyway, I wasn't really a whisky drinker at the time, but we were at a conference in Aviemore, and he introduced me to Dalwhinnie then, and I remember having maybe 5 or 6. And my next memory is waking up in the McDonald Hotel. I was in a suit, waking up in the McDonald Hotel, the top part of my suit on, and I had one leg in my trousers, but they were facing. My right leg was in the left leg of the trousers, so I take my trousers off, and then obviously got to put them on. Didn't quite make it. Ended up on the floor. So that was my introduction to Dalwhinnie, and so.
And was the McDonald Hotel where you were supposed to be?
Oh yeah, I was in the right room and stuff. It was, I shouldn't have been on the floor, however. But anyway, that was. So I started drinking Dalwhinnie on the back of that, and so my favourite distillery to visit is Jura's in Aberfeld. I really like the atmosphere in there, and also because obviously when we're on tour we can't partake, obviously. But as you walk in, they've got that big vent so you get a whiff, this waft of whisky as you're going in.
Totally.
And it's really nice. Yeah.
It's almost like when you went to a swimming pool and you went to walk through the foot bit, but it's like to walk through the air vent to get into the distillery.
A little known fact about Jura's was that the very first advert broadcast on Scottish television for alcohol was for Jura's, and it was none other than Sean Connery that did the voiceover for it.
Oh, there you go.
So
that's just adding value to the. Excellent, nice.
1956 or something like that, I think it was.
There you go. So Jura's the most popular blend in the States, I believe.
Yeah.
That's a lovely distillery, especially sort of when you get late summer, autumn, and they've got the sort of the vines, the ivy growing up the outside. Really nice. That's interesting just to hear. So Dalwhinnie probably your favourite whisky distillery and Jura's to visit. I mean, I love my favourite distillery to visit in the whole of Scotland, and there's a lot of really good ones, and it's always a bit, you don't want to talk down other ones by saying one, but I've never had a bad experience at Ardbeg. I've always had an excellent experience. I wonder if they believe me when I tell them. They're like, he probably says this to everyone, but the distillery visitor centre manager, Jackie's outstanding. All the staff there, they're permanent, they're long serving, they're chilled, they clearly enjoy what they're doing, they're knowledgeable. They'll give you all the time of day, and they're generous with their drams and their pours as well. So they've got a great product and they're happy to share it, which isn't always the case. My favourite distillery to visit on the mainland is Glenfarclas. Again, independent, family run, chilled, relaxed. There's some things if you get overwhelmed they can't take you, but if they can, they'll take you in and they're happy to pour you their whisky and share it with you, which is always good. Well, for my favourite whisky, my current favourite whisky, you'll have to check out my Whisky of the Year 2022 video. Nobody will be surprised to know or to learn that it comes from Isla, but check the video. I'll tell you what it is later. Right, which brings us to this. So, always come back to Isla. We've got a Laphroaig. You've tried Laphroaig before?
Yeah.
Can you remember which ones, if any? Probably
No.
the 10-year-old?
No, but I've got a friend who lives in Mexico, who's from the Basque country originally, and when she came over to visit, she asked, "Oh, can you get me I really like Laphroaig," and so got it, and she proceeded to scoop the entire bottle with no obvious side effects. And it was a bit of an eye opener. So I'd had it before. I think I did have a couple of glasses out of it, in fairness, but not as she scooped the bottle basically.
Nah, that's a bit much.
Yeah.
I like it, but I don't really like it that much. So what I've got here for you is Laphroaig. How's your Gaelic?
Gleba, Tapalat.
Can you
Cargus.
Cargus.
Which means wait a minute. Friendship.
I think it was a derivation like friends is there, but Cargus. So every year Laphroaig's festival bottle, the Isle of Whisky Festival, they all release festival bottles as Cargus, and there are different expressions every year. So this was either 2020 or 2021. This one came out. I usually keep these, but I'd opened this one. Pedro Jimenez casks, so it's got some real sherry influence and it is cask strength. So we're ramping things up. We're putting our foot in the accelerator a little bit. 58.9% to end the evening. And this stuff, you'll not forget this in a hurry. This is and not in a Laphroaig way, not in a cask strength way. The flavour impact of this one. So I've known Mark for a little while through work, colleagues sort of passing ships as you do. You see somebody every so often, every 3 months, then twice in the same week, and then you don't see them for 6 months. And we share a few interests, shall we say. I'm always interested to hear what his latest news is, and being able to get out on tour with Mark. We've spent a lot of time the last few days, got to know each other a bit more, so I thought,
perfect.
Friendship doesn't get much better. So there's not too much left of this. I'm not saying we'll finish it tonight, but let's see what you make of this.
Well, I'm not doing what Thelia did.
Well, it's not true.
I think my mum had a saying, you would drink that out a dirty clute.
Clute, what a good Scottish word, cloth. Well, this we're not going to fill this one up with vinegar.
No.
But I don't think it needs it. Anyway, yes.
No chance.
So I'm not going near it yet. Look at the colour for a start.
I know, it's very dark, isn't it?
Very dark.
I don't think the Laphroaigs I had before were that colour. I'm pretty sure they weren't.
No, well again it's a special edition, it's a sherry cask, right. It's almost like the poured sherry in. Have a sniff and I'm going to watch your reaction.
Right. Oh yeah. Oi.
So you've had a pretty memorable day today, going around Lewis, visiting some amazing spots, amazing beaches, a bit of history and culture. What about that?
That's fantastic.
Can you explain it at all?
I don't know. That could be a perfume, couldn't it?
It's got a bit of that
aftershave.
It's like a cloth full of stuff that you've squeezed in. It's got a darkness and I mean it could have come out of the mat on a bar.
Yeah. And I noticed it's got was it 1815 on it? Is that when the distillery was opened, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Even when you start doing our Isla tours, hopefully I can take you across. I love it. the greatest 2 miles of road in the world. Just outside Port Ellen, in the south of the island, you hit Laphroaig and then Lagavulin and then Ardbeg, and they're all within 2 miles of each other.
Yeah.
Great distilleries. 1815 for Laphroaig, 1816 for Lagavulin, 1815 for Ardbeg.
Right.
So all that sort of range. They've not necessarily all been open since then, especially Ardbeg's been shut a few times. Lagavulin was 2 distilleries that merged into one. There was the malt mill distillery, but an amazing 2 miles. It's a beautiful part of the world, and then you've got these redonkulous whiskies. So, Laphroaig Cairdeas, PX casks, and cask strength. So, get that down you. Now, finishing off as well, going to change the subject a little bit from our political conspiracy theorists.
That's nice. Yeah, that's really nice.
And the power as well. It's a vapory all the way up. I'm going to move on to a little bit of music. You're quite musical, you play a few instruments.
Yeah.
You were tinkling on the guitar in between takes or cuts just now. Give me a wee potted history, your musical past, bands played in, people played with.
I've got a very musical family. So my mum played the piano. My dad had been a bugler in the Royal Marines, but played the cornet. You know, he was really into jazz, my dad, and so invariably in the 70s, 80s, if you're of that generation, you might remember it was quite common. People would come around to your house when the pubs closed. Pubs closed earlier back in the 70s, and so pretty much every weekend, my mum and dad would host a big party back at the house, and my mum played honky tonk. She had a stand-up piano, and she put drawing pins in the hammers to give it that ding. So it's like living in a cowboy film. When we were kids, we were like, so we kind of grew up in that. But at the age of 3, I picked up a pair of my mum's knitting needles, and I think I was watching Top of the Pops or something. But I was banging on the back of the couch in the living room, and then they got me a kind of mini drum kit, and then I actually started off in marching bands. My dad formed a bugle and drum band in Glenrothes. And so at the time, I was kind of like, I just want to play a drum kit. I want to be a rock drummer, you know. But it gave me the rudiments, you know, the basic. So you're not reading music, but you form patterns in your head. So I can actually literally see in my head. I can visualize the music. That might sound bizarre, but I can visualize it in my head, you know. So I don't even think about it. It's almost like you've got your hands are doing it. You're not even consciously thinking, right, I'm going to be doing this.
I've not got that, but the way that I understand it is it's a language. It's a brain function it's innate. As good as like once you learn it, it's there. You're not thinking about speaking. You're not thinking about how to put your thoughts into words. They come out, and it comes out in a musical expression as opposed to a lyrical or a word.
But I actually started off my very first gig. I was out in a place just outside Glenrothes in Markage, and it was the Galloway Jazzmen. I don't often highlight this because I went on to become a heavy metal drummer, and so I did a gig. I went up and played with them, and then when I moved to Edinburgh and I joined a local. It would be a rock band, but it was kind of soft rock.
Did you have longer hair?
I had slightly longer hair, you know, and but we because I had a friend who was a drummer in a kind of semi-professional band in Fife, who were then called Parker's Band, and they later became Perfect Strangers. But they were a kind of what's the word now? They were a cover band, but did it in a very professional way, you know, and so they had a full lighting rig, lighting engineer, sound engineer. So I started going about with them, doing a bit of roadie work for them, and but I learnt my stage craft from that. So when I went to start this other band in Edinburgh with a couple of friends, so we put on a full light rig, put on a show basically, you know. And so I started off in that, and then I played with different punk bands and metal bands, and then I ended up with a guy called Victor Vicart, who's a French guy we were starting off a doom metal band. So this is hardcore heavy metal, you know.
Roughly what sort of year?
This was 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago.
Right.
I'd been gigging with a kind of cover band before that, that were doing kind of Black Sabbath stuff. And we recorded a couple of tracks. But anyway, I got this, and they were doing original material, which I loved. It was right up my street now. Very difficult. It's not mainstream, this stuff. It's that kind of growly shouting, but some harmonics in it as well. It was very different, you know.
Did you ever come across a band called In Decades Decline?
No.
Right, cool. I know a guy who was in a band and it was that sort of stuff. But anyway, right, okay.
So Iron Altar, King Witch. Anyway, this band. So what happened was I was playing drums with this band in the early stages of it, you know, building up a kind of set list, but all original material, which I love. Anyway, I got the gig I got in television or mainstream media circles, you don't get an interview. So they had a vacancy for a reporter, STV, so I got called up to meet DJ McDonald, who's actually from South Uist. He died just a couple of years ago. Well-known television guy, so he invited me up for a chat like this, you know, but it's actually an interview.
Okay.
And he basically said, look, I'd like you to be the reporter.
This isn't an interview, but
No. I hope I get the gig. If this is the reward.
Exactly.
And so he says, I want you to be a reporter, but you'll have to be up in Orkney, you know, based in Orkney. I do Orkney stories, but covering the north of Scotland. And so I had to leave the band, which I was gutted about, but it wasn't bringing in any money at that point, you know. So I left the band, and then 6 months later they signed with Metal Blade Records. They're on to their 5th or 6th studio album. They've toured US twice. They've just started another European tour. And they're definitely going. They're called June, but spelled DVNE. And I love the stuff. I meet up with the guys regularly when they play here in Scotland. I go and everything's cool, you know. Although it's very difficult watching them and watching Dud, who's on the drums, and going, he's in my seat. But it's a very physical form of drumming as well, so it was right at the pinnacle. But anyway, it is
like
what it
those
is.
moments, aye. Well, I mean, if you'd stayed in the band, you'd never have met that walrus.
Exactly. I know. That's the way. That's rock and roll, man.
There you go.
But I'm still very musical. I still like, music's played a huge. In fact, like of all the things I've done, like whether it's tour guiding or that, music's been the constant right through my life. You know, I love music so much. And
do you use music much when you're on tour? Like with people, how do you use it? I mean, I'll often tell you a story and I've got a wee tune that I'll play at the end of it that sort of sums it up or embellishes it. But
I play a whole variety. Obviously, there's only so many people are in. Sometimes people will say, "Oh, can I hear your old band?" And I'll say, "What I'll do is I'll play you 60 seconds, but you won't want to hear much more than that, right?" So I'll blast that. But mostly, what I'll do, my musical choices are tied into like places we're going and stuff. But I'll give a bit of history, not just about that's tied to the tune, but a bit of history about that tune. So one of the things when we do the Fife tour, for example, is talking about Alexander Selkirk, Robinson Crusoe. And as we approach there, I play a song by Al Jolson that was recorded in 1912, and I'm probably the only tour guide in Scotland that's playing a tune that old. But it's a fun tune about what do you do with Man Friday on a Saturday night, So it was a fun tune. Al Jolson, for those that don't know, was he appeared in the very first talkie film. Although controversially, he often appeared in blackface. In actual fact, he was a strong advocate for civil rights in the US, pushed for it, and later on he actually dropped the blackface thing, when he realised, it was offensive. So he's been kind of pushed to the side. Amazing vocalist. Ironically, my dad was a huge Al Jolson fan, and I hated it when I was growing up. What is this? Probably I wanted AC/DC and stuff like that. But I've got an appreciation for the performer. You put on a show, and that's what it's all about. It's not just the musicality. You've got to put on a show for people. A bit like our job, and it's edutainment what we do. You know, it's a form of it. You're informing people, but you're entertaining them.
It's the old BBC thing, isn't it?
Right.
Educate, inform, entertain. But it's a cliche, but it's true, and it's what you should do. You can't learn if you're bored, or it's harder to learn if you're bored. So you need to be entertained. It needs to be interesting. Yeah. Okay, so a 1912 tune on the bus, that's what we've got hard to beat. What sort of music tickles your fancy? What was your last couple of gigs you've been to, something like that? Any gigs recently? Or?
I've not been to... I was at... The last one would be... I went to see the lads, they were playing in Glasgow there. But I mean, I like classical music. I love Holt's The Planet Suite, and which sounds bizarre, but I often play that. I've got a little man shed similar to this, and I'll often go out and play that stuff, but all kinds. I like bluegrass. There's a fantastic bluegrass band called Hayseed Dixie, who originally started off doing AC/DC covers, but now they do everything. They do Beatles and all kinds of stuff. The Who and obviously I play a lot folk. I like folk music. I like all. I couldn't honestly say. I like the archaeology. I was telling you about earlier today about the carnix, this ancient instrument that was played by the ancient Celts. This strange instrument that was is a kind of mixture between a longhorn and a didgeridoo. It sounds, some of the notes that you can get out of it, and that was played 4,000 years ago by Celts from northern Italy all the way up to here in Scotland, out in the northeast. They found the Deerford carnix, and the original one that they found in the National Museum in Scotland in Edinburgh. And so I like that notion because it gives you an insight into what those people were doing. We quite often think when we find when archaeologists find an object, and if they don't know what it is, they'll say, "Oh, it must have been used in sacrificial something or other," and but no insight into these people had humour. We know they joked with each other. Mm-hmm. They played instruments, they sang, they chanted, and you get the culture is much more than just some random bit of object. And I think we need more imagination. Tacitus, the famous Roman historian, is often denigrated as a historian because he embellished things. He imagined what his opponents like Calgacus were saying, etc. But in actual fact, we could do with a bit of that. Okay, have your mainstream historical stuff, but let's have a bit of understanding about what it's tasted like, what it smelt like, what these people experienced. Mm-hmm. Would give a far greater insight into it.
Human beings, as we are physically, we've been like this 30,000, 100,000 years. The thoughts, the ability, exactly humour, projection, whatever. Mentioned Calgacus. I've not spoken about Calgacus for a while. The first recorded Scotsman.
Yeah, Caledonian.
Caledonian and the swordsman, isn't it? That's what it means. But the leader of the Picts against the Romans when the Romans allegedly defeated the Picti.
Yeah. Well, there's a bit of debate because obviously the Battle of Mons Graupus, we're not really sure 83 AD. We're not even sure if the battle took place because there's some suggestion that it was Agricola was the emperor at the time, wasn't it?
I don't know the Roman side of things.
But anyway, there's some suggestion he was desperate to have his triumph, because when you were emperor you needed to have a military triumph that you could parade through Rome. And so there's some suspicion, because the details are so sketchy about where the site is and stuff, that it didn't actually happen. Mm-hmm. And it was basically invented to enable the emperor to have his triumphant march through Rome, mm-hmm. and note who's going to validate it. You're going to go up to, it's still not conquered it, You're going to go up and say, right, where did this battle, so...
Fake news.
Late 83 AD.
But the way I characterise that is when the Romans came across, they came up through England without much resistance. Yeah. And then they got to the north of what is now Scotland. And they claimed they were victorious, but then they fell back and built a wall, and then they fell back further and built an even bigger wall. And it's not very victorious behaviour.
But even then, like from we know in 364, 365, Caledonians launched a major attack onto Hadrian's Wall and actually occupied it for a good 12 to 18 months, killed a Roman general as well. So the Romans, English historians, and not to get overly political, but English historians have often said the reason the Romans they invaded what is now Scotland many times. The reason they didn't conquer it, because there wasn't much worth conquering. Well, if it wasn't much worth conquering, why did they bother even invading? You know, and you know, why did they build 2 walls? You know, it's not worth going up there. You know, it's like nonsense.
There's nothing there, but we need 2 walls.
Yeah.
And all these forts and all these men. Do you do the Hadrian's Wall tour?
I do.
What do you think of like Vindolanda?
I think that's an amazing place actually, and I think the museum is one of the best.
The Roman Army Museum.
Fantastic.
And again, it's underplayed. I'm not getting the English or the Scottish or whatever, but it's just underplayed in British history how important. And when you go down, you see the wall. If you get the chance, visit Vindolanda. It's an ongoing archaeological excavation. A big Roman site. It's got the locals camped outside with their pubs and their shops and stuff. They found stuff like fire pits with semi-burnt notes and things. So Roman soldiers sending their letters home asking for an extra pair of socks for the winter. A lot of Roman history is all official higher up. So it's unusual to see the common Roman soldiers' accounts of how it was going. They found boxing gloves, different types of sandals. Also, it's really quite a fascinating place. The whole length of Hadrian's Wall, the Roman Army Museum, Vindolanda, various other forts. It's interesting here. But
it's really
and it's a part of British history that we know about, but doesn't really massive influence in putting in place structures that permeate till today.
It's the largest structure in the entire Roman Empire that's still there. But as I mentioned the other day, I'm doing a kind of research project on the route that the exact route that the Jacobite army took in 1745. Just now, I'm going to make it into an animated film about following the route in various extracts. Anyway, but during the course of that, I discovered as the Jacobite army made their way down south over the border. Obviously, they got to Derby, 120 miles north of London, but on the way south,
December the 6th, 1745.
So George Wade, who was the British General George Wade, who was responsible for the road network, he was actually with an army in Newcastle and had been desperate to intercept the Jacobite army as they made the way south, but there was not a feasible road to get his entire army over in time. So after obviously the Jacobites fell back and then Culloden, etc., he ended up building a road from Newcastle over to Carlisle, and what he used for the bottoming, the foundation stones for that road, was the wall, because it was the Hadrian's Wall, which was obviously an easy source of quite an easy quarry. So basically the wall was much higher, and at the far ends of it, the extreme east and west sides, that had been decimated many years before that for building, house building and various other things. But the part that we visit was actually much more substantial until General Wade built yet another road. But then they had no appreciation. We visit sites all the time, and people go, "Why is this just a pile of rocks now?" I mean, even like we talked about Dunbeg Broch there. Not that long ago, that broch was considerably more substantial, like 200 years, less than 200 years ago, or just over 200 years ago. But local farmers over time, they've used the brickwork, they've no appreciation of the antiquity or the history, and you can't blame them for that.
And even just general degradation now will help to maintain stuff and restore it, whereas then they've just let it slowly as the wind set and stuff. Yes, well, we're so much more enlightened now than we used to be on that note. Laphroaig Cairdeas, what's your... have you added water, by the way?
Not yet,
no. It makes it a bit more palatable, a bit more gentle, but fruitier and lush, and it's bursting out of the glass.
You can't be a bit of fruity and lush. That's lovely.
We'll have to get you across to Isla.
Aye.
I've got scores more Islas. We'll get some delivered your direction. Well, Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for appearing on my video. Hopefully you've enjoyed some of this at least. It's been enjoyable for me. Well, there we go. Hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I did. Certainly enjoyed myself. I think Mark did as well. As long as you're chatting, having a couple of whiskies, how hard can it be? Now, if you like that video, I do other sort of whisky chats as well, and I'll be doing more in the future. The videos that are already online, you'll see the thumbnails for them just now, check them out. I do other videos as well, your whisky reviews, tour videos, things like that. There's no overall grand plan, but if you stay to the end there might not have been anything that will incriminate us in court, but we did get on a little bit of the politics, the old sort of Willie McRae stuff like that, point you in the direction of things that certain people like to think about, talk about. Anyway, back to the whisky. Now, yep, I'm nearly at the end of this whisky. Hopefully you've had more than the one dram as you've watched the video. Thanks for watching. I can obviously be contacted through the channel here, YouTube. Leave some comments, let me know what you thought, or obviously on Instagram as well, at Whisky Tour Guide Keith, all one word, no E in whisky obviously, as you can see on the screen. But again, thanks for watching, check out the other videos, and we'll see you again soon. Slàinte mhath.